reach towards you, Jesus. Here I am, down on my knees again, surrendering, surrendering.
As we are waiting for Coach Nuno, rest in peace, the Jamila. We are so sad.
There we are.
What's up, boys?
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can also hear some background music, so not sure if that's going to continue.
Yeah, I was putting some music. Oh, so how everything is out there?
Yeah, man, it's good. You know, staying at home, washing my hands frequently.
Yeah, man. Same as well here on our side. But the country just lost a big funniest and talented DJ in the country though this morning.
Sorry, I'm gonna put my headphones on because I can't hear you so well. Just give me a sec.
All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah, I do. Can you?
Sorry, just a sec. See if it goes now.
Let's see, can I could man. It's life, but it's so sad. I can't believe it. Yes, no. Can you hear me?
I can, but the music on the background is not allowing me to
Okay.
really.
Okay. I'll switch up.
Cool. Goes now. No.
Yeah, I
Can
hear
you
you.
speak? Okay, cool. Now we're on.
Perfect. So I was telling you, like the country just lost one of the funniest and the big DJ in the country though, this morning.
I'm really sorry.
It's okay. It's life. This life is sad, bro.
Due to COVID, you mean? Due to COVID?
No,
Oh, nothing
it's
to
not.
do with that.
No, nothing. Like she was just sick a little bit. I don't know, but it's okay. So, no, how are you?
I'm good, man. Good to be here with you.
Good to be
Yeah.
here too. There's many people follow us. Can you see them?
19 people following you.
Yeah,
I
you,
can
you can
see.
even see people just texting over.
Yeah, I
All
can see
right.
them texting as
So
well.
whoever will have a question,
Yeah.
perfect. So whoever will have any questions, they can text. Then you can try to answer the question.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Whole pleasure. So my background is in um, sports and sports science. I mean, I grew up doing sports, especially I was a swimmer. I swam at competitive level,
Mm,
swam for Portugal, earned a few titles. And then by the age of 21, I was training so much for so many years with maybe not the most appropriate rest and maybe not the most appropriate social
mm,
support and psychological support that I eventually overtrained and burned out. So by the age of 21, I decided to give up swimming. Um,
mm,
and that was a big moment in my life because at the age of 21, I was already doing sports science studies at the university here in Portugal. And I really became interested and curious about what had happened to me. Like, why? My biggest question was, why is it that if I trained so much and more than the others, I'm not
mm.
attaining the same results, or I get to the competition and I'm too tired, or my body doesn't respond, or,
Yeah.
And so that's what took me to then after, graduating, I went straight to England from Portugal and initiated a journey that took me 10 years to complete. And
Mm,
I started by doing a master's, and then I went to do a PhD precisely on this subject of overtraining and burnout in athletes.
mm-hmm.
And then, in 2010, I finished my PhD and felt like, what I got from science in terms of, you know, uh, working with athletes or humans for that
Mm,
sake, and what psychology or sports psychology was offering in terms of the tools that were available at the time, I felt that this is not enough, and I felt there
yeah.
was a lot more depth needed. It was still highly valuable, the instruments they developed, etc. But I felt um, this is very template type of work, so it's like general for everyone. And I
Yeah.
felt like knowing so many different stories of the different athletes, everyone's got their own. And when you try to generalize, surely that's not going to affect everyone. Maybe some, it will affect them and impact them positively, but the others, maybe it's going to stay more on the surface. So that took me to, research about schools of coaching. And I found Integral Coaching Canada, which is the school that trained me to become a master coach. And
Mm.
by June 2014, I was graduating from this school as a master coach after 2 years of training, and then I returned to Portugal, and I launched myself as a mental coach and started to work with clients,
Yeah.
helping them, supporting them on their performance, and then and that was it. And here I am.
Oh, that's nice. I think it was a long journey though. So tell us a little bit about your journey as an athlete. Then after you
Yeah,
tell us your journey as a coaching.
perfect. Good, because I love speaking about what I do, and you know, I love I love my path. I love where I came from, and and I love where I am, and I'm very grateful. But yeah, my swimming past. So I'm one of four kids, two girls and two boys. So my dad had been a swimmer. Not anything special, but he'd been a swimmer, and he was quite passionate about sport, and he could see that sport is really healthy for, you know, his kids. And so he put us, the four of us, learning to swim, you know, and eventually, you know, especially me and my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, we became pretty good. We became noticed, and you know, the coaches started picking us for the more developed squads.
Yeah.
And you went from then, maybe from 10 years old, 11, we started increasing our training, and then you know, competing more and training really serious. So it's like by the age of 14, I was training 7 to 9 times a week. I would have practice at 7 a.m. 8:30 I would go to school. Then 6:30 p.m. I would start the afternoon training, you know, so I was doing a lot of volume. And yeah, at some point it became, you know, as I was preparing for competitions for the nationals or the big meetings, I started to have this pattern that either shortly before the big competition would happen or right after, I would fall ill. So I would complain with a lot of tonsillitis. I had chronic tonsillitis, so it was only at the age of 18 that I had to actually take surgery to get them off. And from then onwards, my health improved massively. But then I already had all the momentum or the wrong mentalities on how to deal with training and how to approach training. That athletes are led to think that the more the better, what we call in sports science, the more the better philosophy, which is like if 1 + 1 = 2, then surely if 2 + 2 is 4, 2 + 2 is the preferred option. So we always think that if I train more, I'm going to get better. And no one told me, and I don't see this much happening, because I still see a lot of overtraining happening with a lot of the athletes I coach who are totally not aware of this. And they literally think like I was thinking. The more they train, the better. And the problem is, it's not linear. And because we have a body and mind, physiologically, we're all going to get different responses, even if they're similar. Psychologically, we're going to get different responses, even if they're similar. Emotionally, and so on and so on. So there were a lot of dimensions that were not being looked at and taken care. And therefore, a lot of athletes end up falling in this vicious cycle, and then they can't recover, and then they fall ill or they get an injury, and then they want to get back quick, and then they want to fix quick, and then things are not done, you know, appropriately and with your feet on the ground, you know.
Yeah, I see. That
So,
was
yeah.
so that
Go on.
was your journey as an athlete, right?
Yeah, that's my journey as an athlete. I mean, then I moved. Then I moved into, after swimming, I didn't stop doing sports. I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a beautiful martial arts. Trained for 10 years, competed, but not at the same level, obviously, of swimming, because I didn't want to. And then, you know, I got a couple of serious injuries that limited my training of BJJ, and eventually I dropped out, and I couldn't train anymore because I was just packed with injuries. And so I just moved more into surfing, which is my main sport these days. I continue with gym that I have kept through my swimming, and these days I run, you know, do a few half marathons and a few of those more, you know, nice challenges.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So, tell us about your vision as a mental coach.
Yeah, so my vision is to bring more joy and more physical, but especially psychological and emotional health to the lives of elite athletes. That is my vision, is that by bringing more a higher consciousness to the lives of these athletes and of the sports agents that every day contribute to the lives of the same athletes we're speaking about.
Yeah.
You're going to have much more evolved sports. You'll have much healthier elite sports, and you're going to get you will increase in performance, so you will boost performance still.
Yeah.
And I think that athletes' lives will be much more fulfilling, more joyous, and they'll be much more connected with what they're actually doing, as opposed to be doing something because there's someone pressuring you to do that, or because someone told you that doing that is good, you know.
Yeah.
So this is my vision. I believe that as we, as human beings and as a human race, we evolve and grow in our consciousness stages, that healthier, a manifestation of healthier sports will come. And that's what I do. That's essentially, you know, when I coach an athlete, I'm not only, you know, helping, you know, and supporting the mental side of performance, but I'm also helping this athlete to grow as a human being. And it's not growing in stature or height or strength, but it's growing interiorly. So it's working really with the inner dimensions of that we have, that we can't see, that we can't touch, but that they're present, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's very important work.
I think that is very important as an athlete, because most of athletes, they always think like being athlete is just being physically strong, you know.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about your mission.
Well, it's the mission is very tied with the vision, and really my mission is to first support on the first stage to support the performance, the sports performance of the athletes, but ultimately what I'm looking at, is to relieve the suffering of the lives of these human beings, because we all carry suffering. It's part of being a human being. It's part of carrying an ego inside of us.
Yeah.
But the way then that we approach what we do, and the way that we get attached to what we do, that's where suffering comes in, you know. And there's a lot of stuff that we get attached to, you know. It can be our mindset, can be the vision for my sport or my goals, that when that attachment is that strong and it goes unquestioned, and it goes unnoticed, and it goes unconscious or subconscious, that it creates a lot of suffering. And so athletes go on about their lives doing things and thinking stuff that they're not even aware of what's going on. And that drives their sort of automatic behavior. So my mission is to really bring awareness to what's going on and who they are right now. And that's what I call the current way of being that we all have. And that it's essentially unconscious. It's unbelievable how unconscious it is. And it has so many layers. So it's like the mission is to really bring awareness to these layers of unconscious material, bring them to the forefront so I can see that, and then it becomes conscious. So it's like a subject-object move. It goes from subjective to objective. and then you can start to deal with what's really going on. But one of the things that I don't do, and that I see being done a lot, I mean, I still do that, but I don't do that as a first step. The first step is to really grab who you are now and get to know all these unconscious layers, or at least many of them, so that you can then work towards a new way of being, towards your goals, towards where you want to get. So what I was saying is that I don't do as a first step is to start looking at the future.
The future.
Okay, so it's like normally there's an athlete that approaches you, I got all these problems, and you're like, and they say, and so where do you want to get? And they tell you, okay, this is what I want to get. I want to go to the Olympics. I want to do, get to this team, etc. Get to, break the world record, whatever. And so you start looking into the future. And whilst you're looking into the future and getting pumped or hyped about what's going to happen in the future, you're wasting all of the time to look into what's going on right now. Because who you become in the future, the baggage that you'll carry when you get to that future, is going to carry a lot of that unconscious material. It's always going to be affected who you want to become. So what you do is you start working on what's going on now, you get to know that, and then you build capacities through practices to get to this new way of being. Okay. And that's what I call sustainable growth, because if you're just looking from the start of the coaching and you're looking into the future, that for me is partial development and unsustainable or not sustainable development. It's going to come back eventually. That's what I mean. Whilst you're with the coach is cool because you get that support and you're motivated and etc. But when the program finishes, normally things start to go back to where you were,
Yeah, that's nice though. And what inspired you to become a mental coach?
What motivated me, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, it has to do with the journey I went through as a swimmer. I mean, when I was doing my sports science studies, and even when I was doing my PhD, I wasn't thinking that I was going to be a coach or a mental coach. But really the inspiration came from going through a lot of challenges, disappointments, on and on and on and on, then being disappointed again, and then improving a bit and disappointed again. And, I carry these wounds as a swimmer and into my school. And then, they're also part of who I became as a human being. But what was coming from my heart as I was doing my PhD is like, I want to find out what the heck is overtraining and burnout. Because it's also similar to this in a sense, and I'm just relating to it now because it's similar to the COVID virus. We don't see it coming. It's very similar. It's so silent as overtraining develops, and it's very easily confused with, oh no, you just need more rest, or you've been training a lot, hence why you're not, you're not performing. So it gets very easily confused. So, I really felt like this call to support athletes and to try and prevent more and more athletes to fall on these ties of overtraining and burnout that is going to eventually lead to their dropouts from the sports. And we get a lot of dropouts from sports. That's normally associated with burnout, because they're slightly two different concepts. They're connected, but they're not the same.
Perfect. So, and another question, how this helped you in your journey of coaching?
What do you mean? How coaching athletes helps me
Yeah.
in my own? Yeah, good question. So this comes to a realization I had whilst doing my PhD, is that I started realizing that I can't separate work from my own personal life. And what I heard around me is that these are two separate things. You can't, you know? So if you're an athlete, you can't mix your sports life with the rest, and vice versa. Or if you're a researcher, you can't mix your research with the rest of your life. And for me, this is not true. I mean, I can also see where they're separate, but I can see where they're intertwined, and this is where you need to put the attention. Because when you realize this, you realize that, well, if they're connected, then that means surely that what I do as an athlete in my sport and how I approach competition, or how I deal with loss or with not making it, etc., is going to manifest somehow. It will be reflected on how you show up in your life outside of your sport or outside of your work, you know. So for me, it has been an amazing journey, not only to become a coach, because I have to do my own inner work, obviously. But I have been learning so much with every single client that I work with. I learn about myself, you know, and many times they're a reflective mirror of who I am and my own issues, because I also have issues, you know. We all have them, right? And so it's with real profound gratitude that I do such a work that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, that's perfect. But the other thing is, you know, sometimes like a player, they are preparing the competition, the big competition, but when they reach the competition, they always fail. So, what is similar between like physical competition or mental coaching? Is supposed to go together, or can you explain us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's yes, in an ideal world, they would always go hand in hand, you know, because the exterior reality that we have, which is like, and this objective reality that we can relate to, so I can measure how strong you are, like how far, how many balls to the basket you can throw, and how much can you lift, and I'm going to collect objective data from you. And that's one thing. Okay, that's a quantitative approach to your performance, so your sports performance, to your body. Okay, and I can take some blood samples or saliva and check your immune system, you know, many things, and they're all going to give you objective data. Okay, but whatever we do with our bodies and when we behave, it always has a reflection and a correlation with our interior world, so with this inner world, okay, that we cannot see and touch. Okay. And the same, when you're feeling down for whatever reason, or when you're feeling joyous for whatever reason, because you won a competition, a championship, blah, 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 that's going to have a reflection on your physiology. So it's a back and forth mechanism. And when you're just looking at one and you come out with the truth, that's not saying you are wrong, but it's like you're partially right, because you're missing out on a massive important component, which is this interior's perspective or component. So to answer your question, in an ideal world, they'll definitely go together. You work the body, you work the mind. Okay.
Mm. So, because the reason why I ask you that question, because most of the teams, especially here in Africa, and also in the country that I'm living, which is Rwanda. By the way, it's a beautiful country. You should visit.
I hope so.
Because, yeah, and because most of the time we don't have mental coaches, because we only have what you call coaches, that the one who show us the system, the tactic, the physical ones.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
we don't have a mental coach. Don't you think the coaches should be also the mental coach at the same time?
Good question, but they can. It's not to say it's impossible, but with all the amount of work that a coach or a manager, sports coach, swim coach, gymnastics coach, who are out there on the field, like directly working with the athletes, the amount of work they get and what they need to think of, like, because someone's gonna have to look at the technical issues, the biomechanics of the body, what's not going right with your technique, or someone's gonna have to look at why is it that you can't sustain 60 minutes playing and you're getting tired or you're getting muscle cramps, so someone's gonna have to look at that physical component of sports, and then you're gonna need someone to look at the interior subjective component of sports, which is the mental side and the emotional and psychological, etc., etc. So it's very hard for me to go to a coach or even to criticize a coach because he's not putting attention to the interiors. He's not aware, and even when they're aware, they do their best to give their message, just like my coach, my previous swim coaches. They gave me advice, don't be scared, believe in yourself, next time is going to be better, just trust yourself. But this for me is like cognitive messages, and I really wanted to do them, but because it's coming at a cognitive level, there's so many other levels that it's not resonating with, and therefore, and also then you need to know what types of practices you're going to give your athletes for them to develop this greater awareness of interiors. Okay, so you need to know with what you're working with. It's the same as a swim coach that doesn't know how to prescribe training and doesn't respect training zones, and when the training the volume and the intensity should be higher, and when the taper is going to happen, etc. It's like you need these guys doing this type of stuff and having this knowledge because it's massively important,
Yeah.
And I think it would be too much to ask sports coaches to then go and take another, profound study of their interiors to be able to do it. I think it would be awesome, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but I see it as more distant. So what I see that could be, and it is happening because you see more and more mental coaching. When I came out as a mental coach, everyone was looking at me, was like, what'd you do? They were confusing me as a personal trainer in a gym, or you prescribe training. So you didn't understand, no, that's not what I do. I prescribe a different type of training. It's still a training, but it's slightly different,
So there's a guy who asked you a question over here. He called Nolkan. It's called Nolbet. So how does those approach get applied in the team sport where the relationship between coaches and the players is players have to live up to high expectation imposed by the coaches and the manager?
Exactly. You see, so that's a great question. I can't read the question, but I heard you reading it.
You can read it.
How do I do? Oh, does the approach get applied in team sports? Yeah, thanks, Norkans. So again, this is bringing light to what I've been stressing and why it's so important to have to do this inner work. You know, when we're speaking about individual sports, it's a different matter than when you're speaking with collective. And what Norkans asked me is, you know, straight into the collective sports. You know, it's not to say that in individual sports relationships aren't important, because we all have relationships. If you're a swimmer, a guy from a runner, a cyclist, you know, individual sports, we all have relationships. But relationships become even more important when you're dealing with a collective sport like basketball, football, volleyball, etc. You know, and the dynamics between coach athlete become, in my view, even more important. Because it only takes like the best player in the team to not be performing well, or the best player in the team to get different treatment by the coach compared to their peers. That's going to bring stress somehow. And most of the times, this is not spoken about, you know. So in collective sports, coaching, like interiors, in terms of relationship dynamics between team players and athlete to coach, coach to athlete, is extremely important. Okay, but how? I don't know if you're asking how do I do that? How would I do on a collective level? I would do similar to how I would work with an individual, but I would be present with the team, and I would offer like collective practices for the whole team. Maybe I could offer like some nuance that would be different for, say, for the coach, depending on what the issue was and the specific athlete. It's very, it's not black and white. It's quite a messy process because it's that complex. Because as soon as you add one more person to this relationship, like say you and me, if we have someone else here, because now there is a way for me to relate to you, just as you're having your own way of relating to me. Okay, so we get this awareness, but then if someone joins in, then straight away it goes exponential, because there's a way that I relate to this guy. Okay, that's part of my way, and then there's your way of relating to this guy, and then he's got his ways to relate to us, and then we all as a three create different dynamics. And if add one more, make it 4, it goes exponential. So the complexity grows exponential. So it's messy. It's messy, but so is life.
So yeah, thank you. So there's one of your articles that you have been watching at your website about the overtraining. So do you believe like an athlete, if he's overtraining, it can affect his mental game?
Totally. Again, they wouldn't go separate. If an athlete is overtrained, he's most likely going to feel like, you know, demotivated, angry, sad, tearful, not trusting himself, losing his vision to the goals he has, and so on and so on. So again, it's just an example. It's like, if I'm not performing well, that's going to affect the way I feel and the way I cope with things. So it's immediately, it's going on. It's impossible that something that happens outside is not going to affect you inside, or something that grows inside that doesn't affect you outside. Does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So how can you deal with if you see an athlete is overcome with is over trained? How can you deal with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's delicate, but the first thing I try to do is to approach the coach. So say if I'm having a coaching program with an athlete and I start to become suspicious because I'm not there out there in the training and they can be miles and miles away from me, you know, so I get no
Mm,
chance to go even in. So as best as I can, I need to get close to the coach and
mm,
start to speak with the coach and slowly start to tap into their relationship and the training that he's prescribing, and also sense into what's um, the mentality of the coach and that he's passing on to his team in terms of how should they train, you know, because
mm-hmm.
there's many coaches that don't allow their athletes to, you know, show their emotions, and they're gonna try to, especially if they're boys, you know, you can't be vulnerable, you can't show any type of weaknesses. And um, so it's very delicate. The best approach is to get close to the coach and see if by developing a relationship with the sports coach, he can start to become a bit more open to what you're saying and maybe suggesting. Because then the suggestion is, well, I'm suspicious that your swimmer may be overtraining because she's clearly not responding in the main competitions where you've tapered the athletes. As soon as you taper the athletes, and when the big comp comes, they don't perform, and they perform worse than, and it's like, and you look at that and it's like, it does not make sense, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he should be or she should be improving, then that's a big fact. It's like, this is what's happening. They're not improving. Because often coaches, because I've done this, and they'll try to say, well, you know, this is just a phase she's going through. She's going to get better in 6 months or whatever. And so there's resistance because coaches also do not want to accept. It's not easy for someone to accept that their athletes overtrained, because they will tend to blame it on themselves, and maybe that's not. Again, it's like, yeah, there's some responsibility, but it's not like the coach has got all the responsibility, because the coach maybe is not even aware of what overtraining is or means, you know, and what was passed in the type of education that you get at university. The one I got is you train, work hard for your goals, work. That's the mentality. It's like push. You know, speak about a lot about being resilient. Recently, one of my posts was about resilience, but we tend to forget that resilience is not to hold until we break. This is how we tend to approach resilience, you know. So if you don't break, it's like you're massively resilient. Where I could say that if you don't break, if an athlete comes to me and said, man, I never break, I just keep going, I'm not necessarily going to say is very resilient, because he's lacking the awareness that there comes a time and there is a point in all of us that we need to say, stop, that I stop, because this is not going to bring me more good. In fact, it's going to worsen my state. Okay.
Yeah. So I think on that question and your answer also, I mean, coach, I mean, every team should have a mental coach, right?
Yes,
Because
definitely. If they can, by all means, yes, please.
so that means every team should have a mental coach. So another question that I do have, because it's really hard, and especially from an athlete from injury. to get better, even if physically he's getting better. He's always on the same. Maybe he has an injury back in the day, and they now he's healed. He's trying to practice again. But at the time for going in the competition, you see his performance is very low. Even if he has been trained well, he was on the level with other players, other athletes. But you see in the competition, the I mean, his mental game is very low. How do you think about that?
Sorry, but I missed one part of your question. Are you saying that this athlete, when he's training, he's showing like good mental performance, like he's doing well in training, and then he gets to the competition, doesn't do well? Or did I get something? Did I miss something?
I mean, physically is ready to go back for the competition.
Physically, he's ready, yeah.
But because most of the coaches doesn't look for the mental.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So that also will be the lucky of performance, of the mental performance in his game.
That would be the luck.
The lucky of performance on his game.
Sorry, I'm not understanding your question.
My question is, an athlete has been in injury. So he doesn't have the same confidence as before.
Okay.
So what would you require to get better and to get that confidence he had before?
Okay.
So he could be able to compete as before.
Yeah, as before and even better. So sorry, I wasn't getting your question. Well, we come back to this importance of working with interiors again. Obviously, if you're going to disregard interiors on an athlete who's had an injury and now he's physically fit to come back, but you're just gonna start, you're not gonna put interest or attention on how this athlete feels returning to competition, resuming their practice. You're not gonna look into how, what insecurities may this athlete have when he's coming back. Then you're making a big, or you could potentially be making a big mistake, because normally athletes post-injury, during injury time, the only thing they think about is to heal the injury to get back. And when they come back, there's normally slight insecurity, because normally when they come back, they're not fully healed from the injury, because they need to resume their practice fast. Again, it's like all this fast-paced moving world, right? And in elite athletes is exactly that. So what I would advise, and what I would believe it's really important work, is to sit like coach and athlete at some point during the recovery of the injury, or when the athlete is coming back, and sit down and really speak frankly and honestly with this athlete. And for the coach to get the most truth out of these athletes, so that the coach can really understand what's going on, or better understand what's going on. It's quite complex, but it's really important how the coach will speak to the athlete, and what relationship they already have. Because if it's an intimidating relationship where the coach is here and the athlete is here, then the athlete is going to most likely feel scared and is going to contract before he's going to tell his own or her own truth. You see? So it's like at so many levels, you start to maybe sense how complex this is, but its complexity goes on many levels. But definitely trying to understand how the athlete feels, how they feel about their injury, how they feel about not training for this X period, how they feel when they're coming back, what are their fears? Where are their fears coming from? What's going on? If you're not going to inquire into these areas, then then it's like, my sense is you're just dealing with luck or bad luck. A few athletes have very good coping mechanisms naturally.
Yeah.
Because of the family structure they had, the education they had, the experience they had in their lives, and they find many good, solid coping mechanisms, but the majority doesn't, and the majority will break easily. And many times athletes, because of the rush in getting back, they don't heal fully. And then when they restart their training and competition, their injuries come back,
Yeah.
right? So it's complex.
So how do you work with a small group or with a team or individual?
I work mostly with individuals, but I also do teamwork or teams coaching.
So how do you work with the team or with an individual or with a small group? Because you live abroad, you live in Portugal, and what kind of channel do you use to train those clients, to train those people?
Yeah, well, team is in-person training,
Yeah.
So I go there physically, I'm there, so it's not online. Individual, it's online. But in this day and age, and especially with what's going on, nothing stops you from doing group coaching online. Nothing stops you from that. And I've seen it being done, and it's doable. If you'd ask me what do you prefer, I much prefer being in person. Like a good friend of mine says, one thing that you will never be able to substitute, and I agree with him, is the handshake. Is handshaking or hugging someone. I don't think the digital world will ever be able to give us that, but it gives us such an anchor into working with human beings, doing mental coaching or whatever, meetings, work, or things like valuable things like we're doing now. But you totally can do it online as well.
There's a question. There's a two question over here. Norbert, for a personal experience, I have seen many coaches regularly impose overtraining to players after a loss to a game, which sounds like not a proper solution. Where can one learn more on the technical?
Maybe you could share some resources for coaching players. Is this the one you're referring to? Is that Norkans?
Yeah, Norkans.
Is that the one you're... Maybe you could share some resources for coaches and players. They can have to have more information or ways to learn on that and how to measure that kind of work later. Right. Well, there's a lot of good resources out there for there's a lot of good psychology books, sports psychology books, that will teach you, mental techniques, psychological training techniques that you can use, with your athletes. There's not so much out there that deals with. So yeah, let me rephrase. My sense is that what's out there is more superficial. So it's more based on do this for everyone, and this is going to work out, and it can indeed work. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work, just saying it's not as specific. But yeah, definitely very valuable resources about different practices and techniques that all athletes can use. But really to learn to work with the interiors like I'm speaking, well, one good approach is to start with yourself and to start doing your own inner work. And for that, you get also a lot of self-help books, okay? But if I'd have to give you an author, I would give you my big reference, which is Kenneth Wilber. He's an American philosopher. He's written a lot of books, and he speaks a lot about the same issues I've been bringing here, but not applied to sports. So, I mean, this is the guy who I started with, or where I started reading his books and giving me this awareness of this inner world that we can work on. But I mean, there's not one specific book, as far as I know of, that teaches you to deal with interiors applied to sports in this manner, in this integral fashion. I've got a few articles written that I could share, and yeah, I could even think a bit more and maybe pass to you like a couple of books that could be useful. But yeah, there's not much stuff specific of sports in the ways I'm speaking here that's out there available, unfortunately.
So another question, another is called Amza communication and transparency is a major. I think I agree with you. There's a one
after a lost game, which sounds like not. Can one learn more on the technique?
Down there, there's another one called Enfant Noir. How can someone reach you?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram. You can find me, through using my mental coaching for sports.
I think 1 hour. Yeah, this is it. I think because when you go live, it must be 1 hour, but it's okay.
Yeah. Similar to Zoom, gives you 40 minutes. Then you need to restart. No problem. So I was saying, I don't know if people heard what what I was just saying in terms of how to contact me. So either Instagram, mental coaching for sports, with the 4 being a number, via email, nunu.matos@gmail.com, or easily you can find me on Google search engine. Just type my name, Nuno Matos, and then either overtraining or coaching or mental coaching, and a lot of stuff will pop up that you can connect to, Facebook, Twitter, etc. So it's very simple, and you can
Perfect.
ask me questions. Yeah.
Whoever will be interested for reaching Nuno, just DM on my inbox, and I will give you his contact. And another question is, what challenge do players mostly face?
Well, that's a good question. It's quite broad, because they face so many challenges. I would tell you, what the most common challenges that athletes approach me to when they're coming to work with me.
Mm-hmm.
They're feeling not confident when they're going into competition,
Yeah.
And just this one, you can dissect it in many different ways of expressing that I'm not confident. Not saying that I'm not confident for something is the same as saying what's present in me is fear that who I am and what I identify with my identity is at threat, So normally you are dealing with fear. It's a type of fear that's threatening who I am or who they are and how they see themselves in their sports. So if they see themselves as successful playing basketball or swimming or running, whatever, then if they can't match being performing well, then they're having their identity is under threat. It's under threat. Okay, so that then generates all types of symptoms like anxiety, panic sometimes, like a subtle insecurity, draining thoughts, tense, contracted body. Parts of your body are going to start contracting. Maybe that relates to your injuries as well. So yes, mainly and mostly is fear that my identity will be a threat because I cannot accomplish something, which normally is performance. Okay, so this is like the driving force, I think, behind athletes contacting me.
Yeah.
And then it's like I can't deal with the pressure. I'm about to become a father of my first little baby girl, and so again, there's fear around this, and my wife is really, really close to deliver, and my fears and the challenges around how will I be able to educate and grow my daughter in a society and in a world that's been hit with this, tough crisis that everyone is experiencing. And whilst doing my own coaching and helping humans,
Mm.
athletes, do the same.
Yeah, there's a people who ask a question here. Um, mm,
What can you tell us about the killer mentality? Is that the one?
that was the second one, but
I
there's the
can
one who
answer.
called Katarina Monifaramata. He asked us, can we elaborate on how are keeping in shape these days, both physically and mental?
Okay, and looks like the question is for both of us. Great, thank you, Katarina. I don't know who she is. Yeah. That's a great question, Katarina.
But
Had someone calling me.
Answering. Okay.
Just give me a sec, because I lost my... Someone... So you're asking, can you hear me?
Yeah, I do.
But it's not. Wait, just give me a sec.
Mm-hmm. Take your
I'm
time.
gonna take my headphones, disconnect here.
But answering,
okay, I got you now.
you got me. By answering
Yeah.
Katrina, I think let me just talk a little bit about physically stay in shape. Like like nowadays you are in lockdown, we need to stay home. The only thing we can do is you set up your exercise, you do the CrossFit each and every day, so you can improve your body being and stay in shape. And also you need to reduce the quantity of what you eat, do what you get inside, what you put in your body. Because most of the time you just eat, then you sit, you don't do anything. You need to practice, you need to do something, so some physical exercise, so you can uh, you can uh, you can keep your body fit, you can keep your body being shape. I think also this is a good time for us as an athlete and for people around us to be in shape. So you have your time to work hard and you have the time also to rest your body. I think
Totally.
that's what I should answer.
Yeah. I'll just add to that. Is because it's very easy that we fall out of our own routine, and that we because there's nowhere to go because we're stuck at home. Then I can wake up later on and I can go to bed late, and then we start to fall on a trap that's almost feels like we're under holidays, but we're not, and we need to remind ourselves that we have to still remain productive. And one thing, so it's to find your routine and be more strict or firm with yourself in terms of what times you're going to be waking up and what time you get out of bed. And then yes, to structure some type of 30 to 60-minute exercise at your place in your home where you can do it. There's a lot of stuff on the internet, so there's no excuse that I can't do anything at home, because you can. You just have to you organize yourself and get that routine, maintain the routine going. And so that's a structural, physical aspect of the question. But she was also asking, Katarina, how do we do mentally, right? And mentally, yes. That's now we're touching on the complexity and maybe one of the reasons why we came together to deliver this this live is because at some point, I believe, because I see a lot of stuff happening on the internet, and I see a lot of you know, and incredibly funny things, and how athletes are trying to go around the fact that they can't train anymore, they can't compete anymore, and so I see everyone adapting, but making it in a fun way. I think this is good. This is good, but I also question, like, so my questioning here goes in terms of, are you trying to deceive yourself that you can do the same that you were doing outside? Because if there's a bit of that aspect of self-deceiving, because self-deceiving then tends to push the problem away, push the truth away, push reality away, and therefore, like, in truth, what I'm doing is that I'm not really looking, and I'm not really facing and owning all that has happened and how much this has shaken us, you know, to our core. And so mentally, I believe one of the approaches is to be as fully honest with yourself as possible when you're doing your workouts at home, and to have your feet on the ground, that this is not the same as if you were training, you know. A lot of stuff has been taken away from us, and especially you guys, athletes out there. I mean, I can imagine how distraught I would feel if this happened when I was 18, when I was a swimmer. And I have athletes who I've coached who are world champions and Olympic athletes, and this is absolutely terrible. So one thing is to face the reality and own this truth, that this is not the same, and you're not going to be very hard. You will be in the same shape as you were, I believe. This is very, very, very hard. So to come to terms with this is the first step. And then it's to be balanced, you know. I believe in life, everything is about an equilibrium, you know. Either when you get too much of the left or when you get too much of the right, I always twist my nose and get skeptical, or I get curious, you know, what's going on there. So I think it's always to us to try and find where the middle line is, and to be as close to that as possible. And resilience here that I mentioned a while back in this live becomes really important, because it's about saying, okay, this is enough for me, like, and I'm actually deceiving or self-deceiving myself, you know, and I don't need more of that, because that's not going to be good for me. So I need more realness, more truth, or to deal with, you know, shit happens. This is life, you know. And I believe that this crisis at its core is teaching all of us, no matter if you're an athlete or non-athlete, no matter if you're old or young, is teaching us a massive lesson. But we need to really be curious with ourselves and our lives to find out what nuggets can I take from this that are going to help me move forwards, because we will move forwards. And for that, I have a deep belief and faith that this is going to drive us forward. I believe that at some point, we're going to turn around and look back at the COVID crisis, and despite all the suffering and pain it's caused, and it's still causing, and it will cause, we will be able to say thank you, because you opened our eyes as a society.
Yeah, there's another question here. There's a guy called Makombe. He just say, why do tell us about killer mentality?
Oh, the killer mentality. what can I tell you about killer mentality? Killer mentality is killer mentality is a good one because you can't say that an athlete shouldn't have a killer mentality. But if but when an athlete says I have a killer mentality, then again I become very curious about what does this killer mentality enable, and then I get curious about what does this killer mentality limit in yourself, you know, because yes, I've met athletes with killer mentalities, and unbelievable, even world champions, unbelievable athletes, but that fell on the traps of overtraining because of that killer mentality. Because on the killer mentality, you're not allowed to stop. You're only allowed to kill, right?
Yeah, man.
So it's again, it's like this requires a lot of. That's why it's so important that athletes develop, not just athletes, everyone, but since this is our subject, the athletes develop self-awareness and develop a connection with the self in them. And it's not just the self in the head, you know, it's the self neck down. It's a relationship and a connection to the bodies that carry us. And even though we're athletes and we're working our bodies, you know, all the time, and we're fit and healthy, that doesn't mean that the connection with the body is developed. It has nothing to do with that. Because we're speaking about another level or another dimension of being a human being, which is the somatic dimension, is how connected to my body sensations can I be, and what can they, what message, wisdom, and information comes from that. But it's a different type of information. It's a different type of intelligence that's not the same as cognitive intelligence. Cognitive intelligence is the ability to take perspectives, to see more or less perspectives, but it's very factual, facts-driven, you know. Somatic intelligence is a different realm. It's like, you know, can you feel your feet without looking at them right now? Can you feel your feet? Akizima.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do.
So what do you, okay, and what do you feel? Can you describe a bit of what that sensation is? What do you feel?
Yeah. My feet?
For example, yes, since you can feel them.
Yeah, I can feel my feet because I have them.
Yeah, okay, yeah, but if I ask you more, this is somatic intelligence right here. So if I ask you more details about the sensation, what can you tell me? And I can help you, you know, can you give me a temperature, color? Can you tell me what is it? So is it cold? Hot?
No.
What is
Warm.
it? It's warm. Okay, so that's another information. And can you feel the energy moving somewhere? Or is it static, completely non-moving? What is it?
I don't feel like it's moving or not.
Okay. So I'm not gonna continue, but this is just an example. It's like we've got all these body parts, and we never drop into them. You know.
Yeah.
So if I was if I was coaching you right now, I wouldn't necessarily go and drop into how your feet are feeling. I would go maybe to other areas of your body, but we would delve more. And if there's any athletes here that, and then I've seen there are a few athletes that I've coached that are here on this live, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So the more and the deeper you go, the more anchored you are in your whole self, as opposed to just being anchored here. Here, everyone is anchored here. You know, We're all looking for information, but we forget neck down.
Oh, okay. There's another question over here that someone asked, called John Cost. What is the main difference between the between life coaching and sport coach.
Life coaching,
Yeah,
coaching, and sports coaching, right? Did I get that right?
yeah,
I think so. Okay. I think we spoke about this in the beginning. Sports coaching is about prescribing practices that like exercises, tactics, correcting the movement technique of the how you kick a ball or how you hit the tennis ball, or how you do the throw in judo, or so these are very more objective um, information or suggestions that the coach actually gives to the athletes or to the team. And tactics wise, this can also, sports coaches also do that. This is how we're going to play. We're going to play attack, or we're going to play more defensive, whatever. So that sports coaching is more dealing with is preparing the team or the athlete to deal with the events that go on in competition so that they can perform the best. Okay.
yeah.
So, but this is looking essentially at facts and objective measures that one can work with. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the load? What's the rest going to be like? How many sets you're going to do? What's the tactics? How's the technique looking? Where are you going to play? Where are you going to swim? What type of swimming pool? Is the water cold? Like more systemic aspects. Mental coaching or life coaching. Life coaching, I think they're asking is what I've been speaking about, is dealing with a reality that we don't see and that we cannot point to in space and time. Because like something brought us connected, me and Hakizimana, and there's a feeling that unfolds from this, and if you ask me about it, I can tell you it's a good friendship feeling that I feel towards you, and that I also sense that you feel towards me, But now, so where can you point to that feeling? You can't see it. I can't see it with my five senses. I cannot see it, but I can sense it. That's different, and that's a different dimension. Okay. So life coaching is about dealing with this interior reality that we do not see, but that we can access by sensing into it.
Yeah. I think there's a good answer. There's another question here. A guy called Gino Amza. He's a legend basketball. He asked a question. I think we can all agree that the great Kobe Bryant is one of the top competitor ever. Coach Nuno, can you elaborate on your thoughts about his Mamba mentality?
I have to apologize, but I do not know what a Mamba mentality is. If it's a killer mentality, or what's a Mamba mentality?
But you know Kobe Bryant, right?
Yeah, I know Kobe. I mean, I was never a big basketball fan. When I was a kid, I loved Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and etc. But never followed much basketball. But what's Mamba mentality? Is this what does it mean, or what do you mean?
I think it's a similar like
to a killer
mentality. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I don't know much about Kobe's life and his mentality. I learned more about him after his very sad ending. And what I got from what I read and from the people is that he was a formidable human being. So I don't know. If you ask me more, like I suppose I can speak more about Michael Johnson's mentality. Would that be fair? Because I feel I will be speaking about someone who I don't know much about his mentality. I know that Michael Jordan has a killer mentality, for example. And, you know, like I said before, you know, killer mentality can be a massive support and can make you feel like Superman, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is maybe when on the surface of this Mamba mentality or killer mentality, Michael Jordan's mentality, you know, other athletes like Conor McGregor, for example, if you guys follow MMA, it's something I love. Conor McGregor is another example of a killer mentality. You know, goes for it, you know, full out the whole time. So what I question there in this Mamba mentality is the morals and the ethics that sometimes, you know, on the surface of this mentality, they crumble away, you know, and you actually lose the respect for others, you lose the respect for the game, you lose the respect for your opponents. You do a lot of nasty stuff, and then you end up, and a big problem is because these guys are so big in the world that everyone knows them. They're role models for all the kids these days, you know. And you know, like, I profoundly admire Conor McGregor, where he came from, and where he rose up to. But I certainly do not admire the amount of show that is being put on. I know that that's part of the business as well, but I don't appreciate that, because I feel it's so fake. And being fake is and inauthentic is what causes us so many problems. So eventually it can trap you and take you to, you know, bad moments or bad situations in your life, because you're doing everything in the service of a killer mentality, but you don't realize how much this is potentially hurting or disturbing a lot of people around you.
Yeah, and is the mentor coaching popular in Europe?
Yes, it is. Massively so. Like, I can tell you here, for example, in Portugal, it wasn't popular when I first started it back in 2013. No one knew what this was, but then after Portugal won the Euro back in 2016, there was this lady who worked with one of the athletes in the football team. It wasn't with Ronaldo. In fact, it was a guy who wasn't very known. But it ends up that this guy is actually in the final against France scores the victory goal, the goal that gave us the European title.